Thanks everyone for coming. I'm so excited that we are invited to give this talk today and be part of the Academy. I came to the MSPCA in 2006 as a certified pet dog trainer who was studying behavior analysis at Simmons College. I walked into the shelter, never had been there before, and said, hey, I'd like to volunteer and do some research with shelter dogs. And Dr. Megan Painter, now a dermatologist at West, who was then Megan Rock, the director of the shelter, said, come on in. And I started doing research. And in 2007, Megan asked me if I'd come on and start a training department. Would I teach some classes? You bet. So the classes were very successful. We added more classes. I hired my friends to train there. And things just really took off to the extent that by now in 2024, we have hundreds of classes across many locations, and we'll tell you about that in a few minutes. But in 2014, I was asked by Angell to then start a clinical practice on the Angell side, helping people with their dogs and cats to overcome problems. And that's when I met Jocelyn, who was studying clinical animal behavior, and she came on to be one of our clinical behaviorists. So I want to make sure that I introduce my colleague and pal and genius animal behaviorist, Jocelyn Strassel. Jocelyn, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Dr. Bright. And I'm happy to be here for Giving Day. Thanks for that nice introduction. And yes, my journey at Angell started back in 2001. I initially worked here as a certified vet tech in our emergency and critical care departments. I spent many years working as a technician until I decided to follow that pursuit of pursuing a higher education in behavior. And then after I received my master's, I joined the team in the behavior clinic. That was 2015, and I've been happily working as a behaviorist since then.
So here's what we're going to go over today. We're going to tell you a little more about our department and what we do, about our various behaviorists. We're going to recommend behaviors that you should teach your dog, equipment you should use, enrichment things that you should do. We're going to separate it into your dog's age group, so it'll be very interesting for you. And then we have some case reports that we can talk to you about, and we'll let you know at the end how to engage with us to get our services if they're needed. So we have grown to such a big production. It's very exciting. We have group classes in Boston, Waltham, Methuen, from puppy play and learn to obedience, to nose work, to agility. We have classes in Waltham, Methuen. We now have classes, just puppy play and learn so far, in Salem at Northeast. So this is a great new thing for us. We have 22 amazing dog training instructors across all these locations. You can get a private behavior appointment for behavioral issues with your dogs, but you can also get private training for obedience type behaviors. So if your dog can't go to a class, but you still want to teach sit, stay, lie down, things like that, and they don't have problems with aggression or something, then they can still come here and work with one of our trainers. And once Jocelyn or Dr. Seltzer or myself sees a private behavior consult, we also have support with our trainers to help you put your behavior plan in place. So there's really no place along your behavioral journey from the time you get your puppy or your dog to when they become an elder and just need enrichment. We're always here to help. Here's who we are. There's me. I'm the director and a clinical behaviorist. I only work in Boston. There's Jocelyn, who works both in Boston and in Waltham. And then our wonderful new clinical behaviorist, Dr. Ali Seltzer, who works part-time in Waltham, seeing behavioral clients. So look at that, 3 of us. Let's talk about your dog. There's different stages in dog development. So as we talk about the things we recommend, think about the stage that your dog. Is it a puppy? Is it an adolescent? Everyone has trouble in their teenage years. You can ask my mother about mine. Or are you a senior? Is your dog a senior? Puppies are so cute, and this is my legacy puppy video, because one day in the shelter, these puppies were behind a guinea pig fence. They started getting out. It was the cutest thing I ever saw. And this was years ago. These puppies are far grown and gone by now, but I just love this video. So what we know about puppies is they're between 4 and 14 weeks old. There's a sensitive period when, if they are exposed to stimuli in the environment like noises, people, certain kinds of toys, buses, trucks, especially other dogs, children, and if they're exposed in ways that help them get used to those type of things and they're allowed to escape if they're fearful, then they can grow up and be more tolerant of these types of stimuli in the environment. We see so many cases where at this age, puppies are not exposed, they're isolated, or they're even in very severe fear eliciting situations. And unfortunately, that has a lasting impact. There's no do-over for those types of deficits in their socialization. That's why our vets and the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behaviorists all recommend that your puppy should have socialization before they get all their vaccinations. So before they're 12 weeks old. And that's why, but it should be formal. You know, it should be in a place that is clean, that is taught by people who are pairing puppies with other puppies of the same play style as we do here. We'll talk about dog parks. Do not take your puppy to a dog park. The things that you should teach your puppy, crate training is terrific for them. Sit down, recognizing that their name is something wonderful to reply to. Coming when called is important. It's really important to be gentle with your puppy. None of this scruffing, shaking a penny can. Don't scare your puppy. Your puppy doesn't know you. They're in a new environment, and you want to be gentle with them. We don't recommend that you just randomly start taking food away from your puppy, as many people do or read on the internet, because that can actually cause your puppy to become nervous about having you or others near their food when they're eating. If your puppy ever growls at you or at your children over food or toys, give us a call, because these early guarding type experiences can escalate as the puppy grows. Don't grab your puppy by the neck and shake them if they growl at you. That'll just make things worse. If your puppy can't share, if you see resource guarding, this could be them stiffening and snapping or growling over a toy, over high value food, even their food bowl, over places that they are resting. If you approach them with your hands, they could actually growl, snap, or bite. And again, if you grab them and scare them, you're going to make them even more angry with you in the future. And you can become scary to them, which can make the behavior worse. You don't want to remove their food from them. You want to teach them, leave it. This is something we have in our obedience classes. So if they have a sandwich that you dropped, then you can teach them, turn their head away from that. That's something that is better than grabbing them and throwing them away and having an argument with an animal. Never good. You can teach hand targeting, teaching your dog to touch your hand when you come near them. So again, get professional help for any resource guarding behavior. Call us. We can always help you. We make puppies a priority because those periods are so sensitive for them. The teenage months in dogs are trying. This is a time when behaviors that they have inherited emerge. So, and resource guarding can be one. Guarding the house and the property can be one. So the things you want to teach them are just to respond to the things you ask. Sit, lie down, stay, coming when called, leave it, we talked about, drop it, loose leash walking. You cannot have too much fluency with these kinds of behaviors. There's always going to be a time, instead of jumping on someone, you can get a reliable sit. Instead of stealing your pizza off the coffee table, you can have a leave it behavior. You want these adolescent dogs, these teenagers, to get lots of exercise, half an hour twice a day. And this is running hard with their tongue hanging out. If you do not have a fenced in backyard, then you can take them to a park and use a long line. You shouldn't have them off leash unless it's in an enclosed space. You shouldn't take your dog to dog parks. We call dog parks crime school because so many dogs learn to fight there. And you don't know who the dogs are who are there any more than you would take your 3-year-old or 4-year-old to a playground and not know who was the kid who pushed the other kids off the slides. You're better off having your dog do a meetup with dogs that you know that they will play appropriately with, and have them spend time there. And they have these sniff spots now where you can pay to go to someone else's fenced in backyard. So you could arrange to go there with your own dogs. Even daycare can be tricky for dogs. Some of them are very, very crowded. Some of them are understaffed. You don't know whose dogs are there. You don't know unless you get videos of your dog if they're having a good time or not. So you want proof if you send your dog to daycare of how well it is staffed. You want to see what the dogs are like who are playing there.
Okay.
Let's go, Jocelyn. Talk about
Right.
adults.
On to the adults. Adulthood in dogs we consider to be about 2 to 8 years old. And this is a time when it can be, pretty common to fall away from some of the training you've been doing during these earlier periods in your dog's life. So as a result, sometimes the trained behaviors you worked so hard on, they might become a little bit less reliable. One tip I would give in that area is think about continuing to do some training, right? It's really important to do just a few short sessions, a few times a week. And that's going to result in those behaviors remaining pretty stable and reliable throughout your dog's adulthood. I like to pair it up with a time when you're already giving attention to your dog. That makes it easier to remember in your busy schedules. So maybe before or after meal times or before or after a walk, and you kind of just do a few quick minutes there. Another thing to think about, if you have an anxious dog, it's great to keep a really predictable schedule. That helps dogs that are worriers. So we all feel better when we know what to expect. And if your dog knows the routine and knows what to expect, it might help them relax if they have a tendency towards being a little anxious about things. We love to try some new classes during adulthood. So maybe you focused a lot on your obedience and you want to think about, what else can I do? What else is fun to do with my dog? There's a lot of options. If you have an active dog, it is a great thing to try agility. We have both indoor and outdoor classes, things you can learn there that you might even try in your backyard afterwards. Canine Good Citizen class is a class that prepares your dog to take the Canine Good Citizen exam. And if they get their certification, it tells us that the dog is a safe and trained member of our community, which is a really great thing, of course, especially if you might be a renter. That'll bump that rental application right up to the top if your dog has its Canine Good Citizenship. We also really love nose work. It's so fun. Nose work is a canine sport, but we can also, while it can be competitive, we can also just do it for fun. It essentially is teaching your dog to sniff out a particular scent, like an essential oil. So Ribbon is going to demonstrate the skills she learned in her nose work class. There she is. She's getting released to go find that hidden box that we're going to see. So she's sniffing all over. She has no idea where it is. She's thinking maybe there's something in there. There it is, that paw scratch. That's her indicator. Hey, I found it. I think it's here. And so we're going to check it out. Is it there? Yes, there it is. There's her little box with that birch oil.
Yay, Ribbon.
Yay, Ribbon. Okay, seniors, the golden years. We love our senior dogs here. Seniors we consider to be 8+, and contrary to the popular saying, you absolutely can teach an old dog new tricks. We love to have seniors in our classes. We commonly do. It's great mental stimulation, and it's fun for them. You know, as your dog ages, you might notice that they slow down a bit. Perhaps they're experiencing arthritis or some joint issues that might make going on long walks a thing of the past. And that's okay. We can still provide them with some fun things to do and stimulation. But it's important to get creative and think about that. You know, something like a long lingering walk on the beach to sniff things and wade around in the water like our friend Esme here is doing. That's going to be really great for our older dogs. They're going to really enjoy that. You know, we can also think about increasing their enrichment. What are they doing inside? Are we keeping them busy? We're going to talk a lot about that in a moment. And we always want to mention too with the seniors that if you do notice any cognitive type of changes, to get in touch with your vet as soon as possible. Sometimes you might see something like a change in routine, or your dog might be disoriented. Those are signs of some cognitive decline that you'd really want to address with your vet.
So let's talk about separation anxiety. In clinical behavior, it's the second most common behavior after aggression that any behaviorist sees. It can happen to any dog, purebred or rescue. And the symptoms are that within 15 or 30 minutes of being left alone, the dog may vocalize excessively, urinate or defecate in the house, even if they're house trained, try to escape, or exhibit other destructive behavior. I can tell you that it is usually not safe to crate a dog with separation anxiety. And I will mention that the people who make this $1,000 impact crate, which is metal and impossible for a dog to get out, advertise it as a cure for separation anxiety, and it is not. A dog can seriously be injured trying to get out of a crate. When they have separation anxiety, they kind of have an impulse, a panic attack to escape from where they are. So sometimes, if you give the dog the entire house, as much room as you can, then that will diminish their separation anxiety. You need to surveil them, so get some kind of a Wi-Fi camera so you can watch what they're doing when you leave them alone. You need to work with your vet very often to get medication for them if they will not eat when you're not home. And you need to prevent them from being alone, because every time they are alone, it can increase their panic. So you usually need to work with a professional behaviorist for a behavior like separation anxiety. We want to make sure to mention the training equipment that can frighten your dog and have unwanted side effects. Things like prong collars, shock collars, like the pet corrector, anything that hurts or scares your dog, we don't recommend you use it. If you give your dog a big old correction with any kind of collar and they're looking at a child, another dog, or a person, they can actually associate that child, that other dog, or that person with the aversive sensation that happened to them, and you can actually increase unwanted behavior. These were two cases I had where I removed that kind of aversive training and used rewards instead and saw a good result. So one was my little buddy, the border terrier, who was attacked by another dog when he was a puppy, and he became quite dog aggressive. He got out of their front door one day and really hurt another dog. And the trainer used an electronic collar, shocking him if he aggressed another dog. His behavior got so much worse that they came to me instead. He had 2 fistulas in his neck because he's a small dog, and the prongs on the e-collars are very long, and they actually caused wounds in him. And we used rewards-based methods instead, and he had a really good outcome. In another case, I saw an elderly dachshund who was a nipper of people's feet, and this woman lived in an senior kind of community, and people were not happy about having this little dog nipping at their feet, and she was yanking him on the prong collar and not having good effects at all. And so we stopped using that collar, started using rewards instead, and taught other behaviors, and again, a really good outcome. The training equipment we love, first and foremost, something that smells terrible that your dog loves to eat. The worse it smells, the more your dog will love it. If you smell it and you go, probably should use that as a treat. We love a whistle to teach a recall. That's fantastic. We love clicker training. Of course, who doesn't love clicker training? The martingale collar is a collar that we like. And here's my dog Ribbon modeling it. She's not the most enthusiastic model, but you can see that with the martingale, if they pull on it, it tightens, but it doesn't tighten infinitely. So we like these kind of collars. We like the Freedom no pull harness. You can use a double leash on it, which is great, or just hook it in the front. For head halters, the Gentle Leader is one that is very popular. I will just say that if you use it, mind that the plastic piece under there can abrade your dog's head unless it's fit exactly right. The Snoot Loop is one that I actually prefer. It's made from parachute cord, so it's a little lighter. So some dogs acclimate to it better. Some dogs just hate a head halter, but Snoot Loop is pretty light. For dogs who are strong pullers, we love the Sporn because it hooks from behind. If the giant dog pulls from the front, it just pulls their head down. And all these are training aids. You still have to train your dog with treats to not pull, but these are things that help training. Let's talk about enrichment, Jocelyn.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, what is environmental enrichment? When we use that term, what we're referring to is providing your dog or your cat with opportunities to engage in behaviors that are very normal instinctual behaviors for them. So for dogs, that's going to be things like chewing, digging, sniffing. And, if they're doing these things in ways we don't want, like chewing on a couch, for example, it's going to be a problem. So we want to provide them with appropriate ways to do this. The benefits are that they provide both mental and physical stimulation, gives your dog something to think about, gets them moving in a kind of a low impact type of way. And as a result, it can really help to decrease problem behaviors. So some examples we're going to talk about. First, let's go back to that slide quickly. Couple examples. We're all familiar with Kongs. Those are the hard rubber toys that I'm going to show you a slide of in a minute. Some other food toys, a lick mat we see on this slide that has, basically it's a silicone mat that you can put anything soft and spreadable on. This one has a little sweet potato, a little peanut butter, great to pop in the freezer, give your dog to lick while you're doing something else. The other one here is a little food puzzle where your dog can learn how to move those toys to dispense a treat. You can also think of non-food items using what we call foraging box, like I have here in this video. Sugar in her pajamas is going to show us what that's like. And basically, it's just an old Amazon box with a squeaky toy in there, or hiding a tennis ball if your dog loves tennis balls. And, it's a lot of fun. You can set that out for them. All right, so enrichment is great for all stages of life. I highly encourage you to use it as part of your dog's everyday life, no matter what stage they're in. For young puppies, as I said, it's really helpful to provide an appropriate outlet for chewing. If you have a dog that maybe has had surgery and is in a restricted exercise plan while they're recovering, this is extremely helpful to keep them from not going stir crazy. If you have an anxious dog or one that maybe barks a lot at things they see outside, this can give them something really good to think about. And it also promotes a lot of independent alternative behavior. They might look around for something to do. Here's a few examples. So this is another type of enrichment. This is called a snuffle mat. And it's essentially a mat with some fleece strips where we put kibble in there so you can hear Sugar sniffing around. Really slows her down, right? Rather than just scarfing from a bowl. And cats, they're notorious about scarfing from bowls. This is Walter and Jessie enjoying their activity mat together, eating their kibble from this. And you can see they each kind of have the areas that they like to use. So it's really a lot of fun and really helpful for cats. All right, this is what we call the everlasting gobstopper. This is a Kong toy, if you're not familiar. It's a hard rubber toy. This is one of those Stella and Chewy's patties that we're shoving in there nicely so it sticks. You release it, and then it's hard for the dog to get out because that circular opening is now closed up a bit. We use these a lot in our consults to keep the dogs busy while we chat. And I'll tell you, sometimes it keeps them busy for the entire hour. It's really hard to get that out, but it's a lot of fun. The dogs love it. Ribbon's taking it over to her bed. I love it. Okay, the Treat and Train is a really fun product that is basically a remote treat dispenser. It can be activated with either a remote control or you can put it on an automatic setting. Treat and Train can be used to teach behaviors like a long down stay, so kind of what we call a go to your mat behavior. This is excellent to keep your dog busy if you have guests that maybe are not as interested in interacting with your dog, or if you're eating dinner, to give your dog something to do. So you can see from this video how Ribbon's going to be eating from this. She's trained to stay here. Also, she's trained to stay here when the vacuum is being used, which she used to not like, but now she likes because she gets it to eat from the Treat and Train. This other video shows how you can use it as an enrichment tool. So up on this one, it's up on the counter. That gray bowl is off and Sugar is waiting for it to fall on the ground. Didn't hear the beep there, maybe, but basically there's a little beep that tells her, hey, food is coming, and then that food drops on the floor for her to find. So that's a really fun activity that is really a hands-off thing, which is great. Treat and Train is great for new parents. So if you have, if you're a new parent, this is going to keep your dog busy while you're changing your baby or attending to them. So it's a really awesome tool that you can use in a lot of ways. So I'd love to tell you about an activity that I've been doing and that we love to do. It's called the scavenger hunt. We'll go through it quickly, but essentially what it is thinking about using several food toys to provide some enrichment for your dog. You can utilize your dog's meal and their daily treats. So you can see in this photo, I'm just using what she gets in a normal day. We're not adding a lot of calories here. We don't want our dogs to put on weight. We just want to use their meals and treats in a different way. So we're going to divide up that food in multiple food toys. You can see I have a whole array here. And then we're going to place them throughout the house in places for the dog to find and send them off on their scavenger hunt. And it's so fun to see what they like best, where they go. This is great for rainy days. It's great for getting your dog off the couch if she's a couch potato like mine. And again, really low impact exercise. So really awesome for the seniors as well. And it's a lot of fun. So this is a fun family activity. You can get everybody involved. Really good for kids. Everybody can pick their hiding spots, see which one the dog finds first or last. These are just some examples in the toy bin, behind a door, by some shoes. And you can see as your dog gets better and used to this, you can make it even harder and harder, which is a lot of fun. So this is Sugar being released for her scavenger hunt. There she goes, right to the easy spot. She's a smarty, but she's very enthusiastic, which is nice to see. She's almost 14, and that's good to keep her going. And this is her classic one. There she comes. So this is her MO. And when she does her scavenger hunt, what she likes to do is bring everything back to the bed, and that's kind of her home base. So it's really so much fun to watch her doing that and exploring. And let me just talk quickly, lastly, about how these have helped in some of our cases. Puppies can be very mouthy, and when that mouthiness is directed towards people, it can sometimes be scary, even if it is play related. If we can keep our puppies' mouths busy and chewing, it can be really helpful. So we've seen some dogs that have been, really scaring some of their owners, and we've incorporated enrichment and given them a lot to do with their mouths that don't involve putting them on people, and really seen that problem behavior decline. For cases where we've seen lots of indoor reactivity, this really has been helpful in making the indoors more exciting and the outdoors less exciting, right? So really beefing up what's going on inside is really helpful to decreasing barking overall. And then for senior dogs, as I mentioned, it can be really helpful with any cognitive changes, giving them something like a crossword puzzle. We know that doing those types of things is good for us, and this is giving our older dogs something to think about that can keep them active and healthy.
So thank you, Jocelyn. Great tips. Thanks everyone for listening to our talk today. And we so appreciate your gifts today. If you need behavioral help or you want to take a class, here's how to get a hold of us. MSPCA.org/dog training is for classes. You can always email us with your questions at behavior@mspca.org. And our office is 617-989-1520. And we will now take your questions.
Great presentation, Terri and Jocelyn. Got a couple questions here. The first one is about separation anxiety. This person works from home. Their 7-year-old dog has a serious case of separation anxiety. Whenever he leaves to run errands, the dog panics. The owners tried to avoid him 15 minutes prior to leaving and 15 minutes when he returns, but he still panics. Is there something that behavior-wise you guys would recommend that he could do that would help?
I can tell you that ignoring the dog does nothing to change separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is a panic anxiety disorder, and he needs to see a behaviorist. He should call our office for an appointment or email at behavior@mspca.org, or he should see a veterinary behaviorist, because that's not going to cure it. And so there's no easy answer for that. That sounds like his dog is having a panic attack. Ideally, the dog shouldn't be left alone, and he should call us and we'll help him.
Great. Likewise, this is a person whose Jack Russell Terrier mix is reactive to bikes and scooters, etc. on walks. What do you recommend in that case?
I mean, they can try carrying a preferred food item with them and feeding the dog before they lunge and bark at scooters and bikes. It depends on the severity. You know, if you can sit 20 feet away from where the bikes go by and feed the dog before they bark when they see one, then over time, they might look at you when they get a treat. If it's a big dog, if they're at risk of pulling you down, then you might need behavioral help. If your dog can tolerate a group class, then they can learn a behavior like leave it in class. And I taught my dog Ribbon, when she sees a bike or a scooter or anything like that, I say leave it, and she looks at me and she gets a cookie. But that's something that has to formally be taught.
Great. Let's see. This is an interesting one to me. Is it important to teach your dog to stop at each intersection, or is it okay to allow them to continue walking at the end of each block?
Well, I think it could be helpful to teach them to stop at every intersection, but I think, you know, what we really want is to have some control over what's happening on the walk. So teaching them that being next to you and at your side when they're walking on a loose leash is a place where they're going to get lots of treats and good things are going to happen. That could be really helpful. You could also work on keeping their attention on you. So if you're approaching an intersection, you certainly, if they're trained to sit, could ask for that behavior. I don't think it's necessary, but it sure could be helpful.
I wonder too, if you take the same walk every day, then your dog will be able to discriminate where to sit. You know, I always sit here, and that behavior will increase. But then you shouldn't assume if you go to another town that your dog will recognize what an intersection per se looks like. So Jocelyn is right on the money. Just teach your dog to walk with you using treats wherever you are.
The next one's about oral fixation. They have a dog that has an oral fixation to everything. Toys are always given, but the dog constantly needs to be licking, nipping, biting or something, even in the middle of rugs. Any suggestions for those situations?
I think that's a behavioral case. You know, you need to rule out any underlying medical condition first. We're not vets, and so we can't do that. So I would start with a veterinary appointment. Wouldn't you, Jocelyn, rule out any GI kind of issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when there's a lot of behaviors related to licking and chewing, that would absolutely be the first rule out. We make sure there's nothing going on that's undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm. Great. This next one I can relate to because my dog did this for a long time, but they have a 4-year-old dog who's nervous and has trouble breaking line of sight of their home. Any advice to encourage them to venture further from home? They've tried baiting with treats and rewarding them as they get further from home, but haven't made much progress.
Yeah, I can answer that. Sometimes when our dogs are fearful, we try to convince them to do things, and that can often really exacerbate it, right? If you're scared of something and someone is trying to convince you to get closer to it, or go into a situation where you're uncomfortable, then that may make the fear get even worse. So what we want to do is think about if your dog's fearful of something, you always want to give them an option whenever possible to retreat from that scary thing. If they want to turn around and go in the other direction, the more times you do that, the more predictable it's going to be to the dog, where they're going to learn, okay, if I'm nervous, I can go in a different direction. That might give them confidence over time to keep going. So that's really the approach we want to take, rather than trying to lure them with food or convince them. And, when they are moving along and they're confident and walking, next to you, that's when you want to use that food. So reward the behavior that you like, which is just confidently walking along with you. And then if they throw on the brakes and want to turn around, the more you can allow them to do that, the better.
If this is a person who has a reactive dog, and the question is, do you recommend exposing the dog slowly to other dogs from a distance, being mindful of his threshold, or using high value treats or other strategies?
That kind of falls into it depends kind of category. Like we carefully assess the degree of reactivity versus aggression here when we see those kinds of cases. Just very generally, if your dog just barks when they see other dogs, you don't know if they're kind of saying, come closer, I want to play, or go away, I'm afraid of you, or you're in my territory. So it's hard to say exactly, but it can't hurt to stay at a distance at which your dog sees another dog and gets a preferred treat. If you can do that consistently over weeks or months and then gradually close the distance, then your dog should start to look at you when it sees other dogs. But it all depends on the reason for your dog's lunging and barking when it sees other dogs. And that's something that we uncover in our assessments.
Then there's one last question here. This person had a highly socialized young puppy that was fearful and property protective at 6 months. They gave it intensive behavioral training and it has gotten better inside the house, especially. But at 13 months, the dog still reacts outside to everything and is scary to neighbors. How long might this take? And should I be worried that she's still very reactive?
Well, I think that also sounds like a dog that could benefit from getting a full assessment from a behaviorist, really to dive into what's happening and why, and come up with a plan. I can tell you that behavior change is not quick. It is not a quick fix, and there's no cure. So there may always be situations that certain dogs struggle with. It's tough to say, but often it takes months to see even small changes.
Thank you so much, guys. Those are great questions. I appreciate all your answers. And for any other questions that anyone have, if something pops in your head later on, you can email behavior@mspca.org and they will get back to you. Thanks, Jocelyn and Terri.